VikesNow, I am Dustin Baker. We are 3 weeks away from the NFL draft. You guys and gals will probably be watching this on Thursday, April 4th, which means in 3 weeks we should know the identity of the Vikings starting quarterback henceforth for life after Kirk Cousins, and we'll still have 3 more weeks to dive into that. Hope you enjoyed our chat earlier from Wednesday with Ryan Roberts of Rise and Draft. He's an elite NFL draft mind. Got him on here to chat about the Vikings. If you haven't watched that yet, it's about 20 minutes long. You can find it here in the VikesNow feed. What I'd like to do this evening, it's Wednesday evening my time, is to talk about some bold draft predictions that I have for these Vikings. Some are bolder than others, but the list has 5. And I will probably have a separate show for draft predictions, but these are predictions for the month of April on the whole. Not all of them are related to the draft. Most of them are, but there's a couple here that are free agency still related. So I want to drop those now, get myself held accountable, and then we'll spend the next 3 weeks trying to figure out what this draft's going to look like. I'm on the solo trip tonight. I got to see if I still got it. I haven't talked to you guys and gals for quite some time, just myself. So let's hop right into it. 5 bold Vikings predictions. I'm going to start at number 5. I guess we'd consider it the least important of the 5, the least bold. It's really not that bold at all. But my first one here is that a promising WR3 candidate from round 4 or 5 is drafted by these Vikings. And I think the hints are palpable here because there are a lot of decent WR3 types that could already be signed. If you don't trust Brandon Powell or Trent Sherfield or Jalen Naylor for the job, the Vikings could put their foot down and say, you know what, we're just going to sign DJ Chark and call it good. Or, hey, we're going to sign Tyler Boyd, who's probably the best WR3 on the market. Curiously, they haven't done that, which leads me to believe, putting this puzzle together, that they like somebody in the draft that they think they can get in mid to late rounds. So you've heard on this show ad nauseum from Josh Fry and today Ryan Roberts that Jamari Thrash is one to monitor. It sounds like he's a sleeper candidate. I doubt he'll be as good as Puka Nacua, but then again, who is as a late round draft pick? Another one is Christian McCaffrey. Luke McCaffrey, Christian McCaffrey's brother. Those are guys in the vein of what I'm talking about that can probably get got on day 3 on Saturday of draft weekend. So I think we would have already seen somebody better than Trent Sherfield signed if the Vikings wanted to get this roster need out of the way in free agency. Curiously, again, they didn't do that. So my 5th prediction, bold prediction for the month of April is that the Vikings will identify and draft their WR3 candidate. I don't know if the guy will start week 1, but I think we'll certainly get excited about it to suggest as such. And then maybe throughout the season, whoever he is, Thrash, McCaffrey, or a different guy, that guy can emerge because there's really no Osborne that's absolutely nominated to be the WR3 for the Vikings in 2024. So put me down for that, a WR3 candidate for certain during the draft. Number 4 is a defensive tackle, somebody for Jonathan Bullard's spot, not Harrison Smith's spot, the 3 tech. A defensive tackle will be the Vikings' 2nd pick of the event. Kevin O'Connell was asked about defensive tackle last week. He seemed to hint that Christian Wilkins was an object of their desire in free agency, but they just couldn't quite afford it. And that dude got, 4 years, $110 million from the Las Vegas Raiders. And the Vikings got Jerry Tillery and Jonah Williams and Jonathan Bullard back. So in the same spirit of the last one I just offered on WR3, I think that whomever the Vikings identify and pick as their quarterback of the future, let's hope it's Drake May. The show is not shy about that. I think that the next pick, unless they do some fancy trading into round 2 somehow, or there's not much draft pick in between, and especially if they trade again, trying to get up into the top 3. I think after the dust settles, the Vikings package their 2 first-rounders, trade with the Patriots, the Cardinals, or the Chargers. I think the pick after the quarterback will be a defensive tackle. And by that time, you're talking about maybe Mason Smith from LSU, Justin Ibobi from Alabama, Jordan Jefferson from LSU. There are options. Now, I don't know if that guy is going to be a baller. They already have Jaquelin Roy from late rounds last year. But if the Vikings were unable to get Eric Armstead or Grover Stewart or Leonard Williams or Christian Wilkins, I think they either really don't care about that spot in Brian Flores' defense, or they say, you know what, we're going to sign a bunch of these ragtag veterans who aren't very good, and then, hey, we're really going to nail the draft. They got a guy circled that they like at defensive tackle. So put me down for this, the WR3 candidate, mid to late rounds, and then a defensive tackle. After we figure out who the damn quarterback pick is, a defensive tackle will be the pick thereafter. Number 3 is Dalton Risner. I'm starting to think that we inflated how good Dalton Risner was. He was a good football player, but the way that the Vikings fans love him, it's like this guy is elite or has played for this team for 12 years or some shit like that. I like Dalton Risner. I think he was a wonderful pass protector. I just don't really lose sleep that the Vikings haven't re-signed him. I trust them. They've earned my trust in terms of offensive line cultivation. If they think Blake Brandel is ready, great. Let's let that play out, and if they are wrong, then we can bitch to high heavens. But I believe Dalton Risner, my bold prediction, will sign with the Eagles or with the Raiders. Usually, I'm pretty decent at this. Usually when I try to figure out when a player, where he's going to go, like Eric Kendricks, he was on my list last year for the Chargers. And then, let's see, Dalvin Cook, I had him going to the Ravens. That was correct. I think Risner, because of previous coaching ties in his Broncos days, I think he'll end up with the Eagles or the Raiders, and thus not back with the Vikings. Now, about a week and a half ago, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah chatted with Paul Allen, who will be on this show very soon, by the way. Made that connection. Kwesi chatted with Paul Allen, and PA asked him about Risner and a potential sequel, and all Kwesi offered was a politician's answer of, we're going to find the best guy for the position. Usually, when Kwesi is asked about a former Viking coming back, he says something, hey, we'd love to have him back. We're going to continue to have those conversations. He didn't say any shit like that. He said, can't really talk about that. We shall see who's going to be the guard. So I don't think Risner's coming back. Risner also hired Drew Rosenhaus to fix this free agent problem that he has. Nobody wants him during free agency 2 years in a row. It took until midseason last year to get him, and now it's the same thing that's happened again. So no wonder he hired Drew Rosenhaus. I ultimately believe, because of previous coaching ties, that Dalton Risner will not re-sign with the Vikings. He'll end up in Philadelphia or Las Vegas. All right, we're down to number 2. I'm gonna guess that you know what my number 1 will be, and I'm gonna lock it in. But number 2 is Xavier Howard or Stephen Gilmore will sign with the Vikings sometime this month. If I'm wrong about it, maybe it'll be May. Let me lay this one out for you. I don't have the anxiety or apprehension about the Vikings cornerback room like a lot of yous do. And I'll tell you why. They have 5 guys that you could play if the season started tonight. There are 5 cornerbacks that could hit the field, and you could feel somewhat confident they were going to do a decent job. Shaquille Griffin, he was just signed, 2 weeks ago? Byron Murphy, he's handsomely paid to be CB1. Caleb Evans, we shall see if he bounces back from his benchings last year. Mekhi Blackman, who played wonderfully for a rookie. And then Andrew Booth, the guy that we all want to see do well. That's 5 guys. The Vikings, usually when we're nervous about the cornerback situation, it's because we're looking at a roster and we're like, oh, they only got 2 guys. Have they not realized this yet? That's not the problem this year. They have plenty of guys. We just have to figure out if those guys are good enough to be a good defense. Here's why I think that either Howard or Gilmore will be signed. Both of them have ties to Brian Flores. With Howard, it was from the Miami days when Flores was the head coach. And with Stephen Gilmore, it was for 2 seasons, I believe 2017 and 2018 with the Patriots. Now, Flores didn't directly, coach cornerbacks. I don't think that was his job those seasons, but he inevitably will know them. So here's where I'm at. The Vikings probably don't have the draft capital to spend on a cornerback, and thank God. I'm sick of them. I'm sick of mock draft season being all about cornerbacks, CBs for the Vikings. They can really put their foot down. Let's say it's Stephen Gilmore. He played great all 17 games last year for the Cowboys. He had a 70-something PFF. I think he's, 31 or 32. Let's say the Vikings sign Stephen Gilmore. Then all of a sudden, you have Gilmore, Shaquille Griffin, Shaquille Griffin, Byron Murphy, Andrew Booth, Mekhi Blackman, and Caleb Evans. That is 6 dudes, and you can get to the spring and summer training camp and preseason, and out of those 6 guys, you should be able to find a good cornerback room, and a lot better than we're used to since the days of peak Xavier Rhodes. They don't have the draft capital to get a Quinion Mitchell unless they do something really, really funky. I don't even know how they could do that if they plan to get a quarterback. I guess they could get a cornerback if they stick and pick at 11 and 23. So, hey, we're getting Michael Penix, and then we're going to draft Quinion Mitchell or something like that. They can solve cornerback and actually make it a really good group if they sign Stephen Gilmore or the good version of Xavier Howard. Because then it's just a plethora of faces in the cornerback room, and probably meaning that Caleb Evans will be cut and maybe Andrew Booth or something like that. But the way that the defense has trended this offseason, making that the priority in free agency, I think it makes all the sense in the world to get Howard or Gilmore. They're experienced, so they can provide tutelage for some of these younger faces in that room. Brian Flores played with both of them. And I think whichever quarterback they draft, or if they roll with Sam Darnold, they want this defense to be, at the top of the billboard. They want it to be good. It made marked improvement from 2022 to 2023. Per DVOA, it went from 24th in the NFL, which is 9th worst, to 11th best. They were the 11th best defense per DVOA last year. And if you look at Brian Flores' track record with the Dolphins, every step of the way, his defense got better. So in theory, if you trust DVOA as a credible efficiency metric, boom, the Vikings defense can climb into the top 10. So I think they're getting serious about the defense. They know they don't have to pay Kirk Cousins anymore. Probably going to have a cheap quarterback for the next 5 years. I think they're going to lean into this defensive part, and Gilmore and Howard won't be crazy expensive. Now, if they would have traded the 3rd rounder for L'Jarius Sneed and hoped that his knee was all right, then they would have had to pay him almost $20 million per season or whatever he fetched from the Titans. So I think they're interested in getting super deep at cornerback, and you look no further when you look at the free agent wire than Howard and Gilmore, who have ties to Flores. So I predict one of those guys will end up with the Vikings, and then you will look at the depth chart in the CB spot and say, hey, this is pretty sweet. Let's rock and roll. All right, the last one. I reserve the right to change this. I have 3 weeks. I agonize trying to figure out who the Vikings will draft at quarterback. I really don't care who they trade with. If it costs 3 first-rounders to the Patriots, that sucks, but I guess let's do it. We'll do it and hope for the best. If it's only 2 seconds with the Chargers, beautiful. But I agonize over who's it going to be. I'm right there with you that it feels like a binary choice between J.J. McCarthy of Michigan and my guy Drake May of North Carolina. And within these 3 weeks, I might flip-flop like I did in January, trying to decide if Cousins was going to be extended. Ultimately, when we hit February, I looked over everything. I was like, no, there's no way this guy is coming back if they're going to pay Justin Jefferson. There's no way you do a competitive rebuild and keep bringing the same old quarterback back. So I got that one right, and I think as of this 22 days away from the draft, I think the Vikings will trade up with the Patriots, and then they'll get Drake May. I didn't think Drake May was realistic back in January when I identified him as the guy that I wanted the Vikings to get. I really didn't think that they had the oomph to trade up the board. But when they traded with the Texans almost 3 weeks ago, that changed my mind. That showed, hey, there's no more Mr. Nice Guy. They're not monkeying around. They're going to try and get their quarterback of the future. And if you look at the way that Kevin O'Connell's offense ticks, in a good way, at heart, it is created for a pocket passer. Now, if that pocket passer just so happens to be mobile, or I don't know, we're gonna have to debate whether or not Drake May is a mobile quarterback. He might be a mobile quarterback like Aaron Rodgers was as a younger man, but I don't know that Drake May is a true blue mobile quarterback. I think that's reserved for Jaden Daniels and Lamar Jackson and those dudes. But the Kevin O'Connell offense, in my opinion, from what we've seen of it, is really designed for somebody like Kirk Cousins, and then it's just gravy if the guy can also move, like Josh Dobbs did wonderfully for a few games. So based on how I think Kevin O'Connell wants to play an offense or run an offense, Drake May is only 21. He's going to be 22. He's actually pretty gettable in this draft now that they have 2 first-rounders, and then that naggingly good Josh McCown connection from North Carolina. I do think that had a little purpose, hiring him, because, hey, this guy, he knows May like the back of his hand. They rolled together for a little bit. He and Sam Darnold in New York, when they were both quarterbacks, watched Drake May tape, to help coach the kid up. So right now, my final bold prediction is that the Vikings find a way to trade with the Patriots. Probably the 3 first-rounders. I don't know what player would be attached. It certainly won't be Justin Jefferson. I hope it's not Jordan Addison. Maybe somebody like Brian O'Neill, because they do have a need for an offensive tackle. But let's just say evenly, 3 first-rounders for the Patriots pick. It sets the Patriots up nicely to fortify their roster needs. They've got holes at offensive tackle, wide receiver, edge, and quarterback. And if they start team building now and, roll with Jacoby Brissett for a year or take a lottery ticket on Bo Nix or something like that, let the Patriots do that. The Vikings don't want a half-ass solution. The Patriots can do that while they're team building. The Vikings offense is ready for a dude like Drake May to be plopped in, parachuted in, and say, cook. It's your time. Just go out there and cook. Now, I don't know if Drake May would start week 1. We'll have that debate all summer. But right now, I'm leaning toward Drake May as the pick. Probably have to trade with the Patriots to ensure that you get him. I've been talking with Yannick Eckhart pretty frequently off air. He's been on the show before. That it feels like the draft machine is telling us that J.J. McCarthy is going to go in the top 3. Well, great. Even better for the Vikings. Then they can trade with the Cardinals or Chargers and only donate 2 first-rounders and some deal sweetener. The only thing that makes me paranoid about this Drake May prediction being wrong is, and I've said this before with some of our guests on the show, I swear to God that Kevin O'Connell and J.J. McCarthy are like the same guy. They're the Spider-Man meme. They're both happy as hell. They both just feel young. They're quarterbacks. They're culture guys, eternally optimistic. And if we look up on draft night on the 25th and it's J.J. McCarthy, we're probably going to look at each other and be like, yeah, we saw this coming a million miles away. The head coach, an eternal optimist, happy guy. He went and got the eternal optimist, happy quarterback who just so happened to win the national championship a couple months ago. So right now I'm torn. I'm like 60% Drake May, 40% McCarthy in terms of a prediction. I'm 100% on wanting Drake May as my recommendation. All right, that's what I got. A promising WR3 candidate found in the draft. I'm not talking about just some guy nobody's ever heard of. I'm talking about somebody like Jamari Thrash, who's been identified on this show as he can be the guy at WR3 within a year or two. A defensive tackle will be the 2nd pick of the Vikings draft, no matter where that is. I predict Dalton Reisner will sign with the Eagles or the Raiders and not be a Viking next season. Or this season, depending on how you look at it now on the calendar. Xavier Howard or Stephen Gilmore will be signed by these Vikings because both men will be affordable, so therefore they can splurge on one, and then we can put all of this unrest about CB as a roster need behind us, because you will have 6 guys who are decent or good. And then right now, even though I might end up picking McCarthy when we get down to like the Monday before the draft, I say that Drake May will be the selection by the Vikings after a trade with the Patriots. All right, that is all we got. Friday, we'll be back with Thor Nystrom. He said he enjoyed being a guest every 3 weeks or so we will chat with him. We'll see what he has learned in these past 3 weeks and go from there. Skol, baby.